Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. Today's video review is on the Kangertech Protank 3 V2. Hopefully you can see that fairly clearly. Now when the Protank 2 came out, it was an extremely popular tank. A lot of people liked it. But when the Protank 3 came out, well, it had some mixed reviews. So what we're going to do today is we're going to open this box up, go through all the components in the Protank 3, talk about the differences between the Protank 3 dual coils and the Protank 2 single coil, and then we're going to go ahead and put some e-liquid in it, fire it up, and then we'll talk about the flavor and the vapor production of the Protank 3 as opposed to that of the Protank 2. Hopefully that will help you decide whether the Protank 3 is worth buying or not. So stay tuned. Now, the Protank 3 came out late 2013, so it's been on the market for about a year and a half. And if you take a look at this box, they have a few things on it to guarantee that you do have a genuine Kangertech product. The first thing I want you to take a look at is this little, almost a purplish decal here with a little K in the middle of it. I don't know if you can see that with the camera, but if you wet your finger and put it on it, it should turn a dark solid color, which this pretty much does. Once it dries up, the K will return. You also have a little sticker here on the side that if you scratch it, some numbers are going to show up. You put these numbers onto the Kangertech website, and it should also guarantee that this is a genuine Kangertech product. But what I find funny is, you know, regardless of all these things that they put on the box to show that you have a genuine Kangertech tank, you turn it around to these instructions back over here, and it talks about carefully filling your aero tank with 1 to 2.5 milliliters of e-liquid. Now the aero tank, I believe, is a whole separate tank from Kangertech. So that's not the only thing. When you open it up, you do have your instruction booklet here that shows a picture of the Protank 3 dual coil. But when I open it up, it talks about the Kanger Protank 3 Mini, which is a completely different tank as well. And that's not the only thing. You turn the other page over here and it says all parts is replaceable. So they obviously do not have grammar check when they write this instruction booklet. But luckily I could take a look at the tank here itself, and I do know that in fact is a Protank 3 full size. So that's an amazing thing here. They have all these things to tell me what that this is a genuine product, but they have 3 different models on the instruction booklet and the box itself. So anyway, what comes in the kit? Well, you have a fully assembled Protank 3. You do have 2 dual coil atomizers, and then you also have a little skirt that you could use to attach your Protank 3 to your battery. Let's take a look at the skirt. Here I have an Ego C-twist battery. The skirt is basically just for aesthetics. It's 510 threading, so you screw that onto your battery, and then you take your Protank 3 and screw that onto the skirt. And basically all this does is streamlines your electronic cigarette, and it prevents, you know, snagging your tank onto something when you're walking by. So that's all there is to the skirt itself. The Protank 3 is a double coil bottom fed tank. And I'll go ahead and break it down for you here. Now this tank, there's no glue involved, and you can completely disassemble it. So it makes it very easy for you to clean. It should give you a long time of good use. So when you break it apart, the first thing I'm going to take apart here is the atomizer assembly. This is where your atomizer screws in. You have your bottom assembly right here. There we go. You have your Pyrex tank, and that holds 2.5 milliliters of e-liquid. And then you have your top assembly. And then you have your mouthpiece that simply snaps in and out. And it's pretty tight. I'll put that back in. So what's the difference between the Protank 3 and the Protank 2? Well, obviously the Protank 2 uses single coils, and the Protank 3 uses dual coils. The only other difference is the housing assembly, the bottom housing assembly, and I don't know if you can see it right here. Look at the inner tube. What I have in my left hand is the Protank 2, and my right's the Protank 3. There's an inner tube that appears to be a little longer on the Protank 2 than on the Protank 3. That's the main difference that I've seen as far as assembly itself. Now what's interesting is that any atomizer that you use with the Protank 2 will work on the Protank 3. However, the dual coils on the Protank 3 will not work with the Protank 2. And I'll show you the difference between the atomizers for a single coil Protank 2 and the Protank 3. A little different. Let me see if I can get these things here for you. Okay. The stem appears to be a little bit longer. The base is a little bit wider on the Protank 3. The wicks are on the inside as opposed to the wicks being on the outside on the Protank 2. And take a look at this image that I have right here. When the Protank 3 first came out, there was no stem. On the right side of the image was the original dual coil atomizer that came with the Protank 3. You can see the dual coil wicks sticking on the outside with a little plastic gap on top, and that went away. A lot of people complained about it was leaking too much. It didn't last as long as the 10 to 20 days as it was advertised. So they came out with a new style, which is what I have in my hand right now. And the stem is back, and the wicks appear to be on the inside. And you seem to have two different slots on each side, so the e-liquid can be absorbed by the wicks. One other argument that people had was that the mouthpiece was too loose. I don't know if this has been looked into by Kanger, but the mouthpiece appears to be as tight with the Protank 2 as it is with the Protank 3. I don't see any problems with that whatsoever. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put these two kits back together again, the Protank 2 and the Protank 3. I'm going to fill them both up with e-liquid, and then I'm going to vape both of them at the same time. And I'll tell you what the difference is between the Protank 2 and the Protank 3 when it comes to vapor and flavor. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put some e-liquid, the same e-liquid, Mount Baker Vapor, into both the Protank 2 and the Protank 3. Speaking of Mount Baker Vapor, as far as all the sites that I've seen that sell the Protank 2 and the Protank 3, I think they're the ones that have probably the best deal. They're selling the Protank 3 for $11.49 and the Protank 2 for $11. So there's only about a 50 cents difference between the Protank 3 and the Protank 2. $11 on Mount Baker Vapor. On the Kangertech website, the Protank 2 is going for $16.99. So it's even more expensive from the company that actually creates the Protank 2. So I do have a 10% coupon on Tobacco Solutions for any products by Mount Baker Vapor. If this is something that interests you, I'll put a link on the bottom of this video. Simply go to the website, click the link, and the coupon code will be made available for you. So let me go ahead and put some e-liquid into my Protank 2. And just so you know, this is Mount Baker Vapor Moo Juice. I've got a brand new atomizer in here. Okay, that's good to go. Put that to the side. Let me go ahead and reassemble the Protank 3. I'll put the Pirate's tank back onto the upper assembly. Screw on the lower assembly. Okay, let me go ahead and try to get this. I don't have any nails, so I'm going to do it this way. Screw the atomizer to the atomizer assembly. And then let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and fire up this atomizer real quick, get it a little bit nice and toasty before I put some e-liquid in. And I'm using my e-lift ice stick that you could also get on Mount Baker Vapor. Take a look at these little holes right here on the side. These are where the wicks are located. They'll start glowing red for you here in a second. See that? And I'm at, what's my voltage here? 3.8 volts. Look at that, there we go. Okay, get them nice and toasted, ready to get the e-liquid in. Okay, let me unscrew that real quick. Put some of my Mount Baker Vapor Moo Juice inside here. Now you want to keep it at least 1/3 capacity. This is a 2.5 milliliter tank. The reason why you want to keep it at least 1/3 is because it creates that vacuum. That way you can go ahead and have that good vapor and good flavor production from this Protank 3. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, screw this back in. Let that juice be absorbed by the wick. Give it about a minute or two. And then I'm going to go ahead and try both these things out. And you tell me which has the best vapor and flavor. And I'll give you my opinion as well. All right, folks. Now it's time for the main event. Who's going to win the Vapor Flavor Challenge? The Protank 2 or the Protank 3? I've got my E-Lift ice stick right here. I'll have it set for 4 volts. First up is the Protank 2 single coil. Let me go ahead and screw that in, and we'll try it out. Okay, so that's the Protank 2 single coil. Next up, Protank 3 dual coil. Same battery, the E-Lift ice stick at 4 volts. All right, let me tell you what I think. I think the vapor production on the Protank 2 is a little better than the Protank 3. I think the flavor is also a little bit better on the Protank 2 than the Protank 3. What I noticed on the Protank 3 is that it burns a little hotter, almost a little bit too much. So if I was to give you my own personal advice, it would be this. If you have the Protank 2 and you're thinking about upgrading, don't go with the Protank 3. Go to something else like the Aspire Nautilus Mini or some other tank that you find interesting. If you don't have the Protank 2, then go ahead and get the Protank 3, because at least with the Protank 3 you can use the dual coils or the single coil, which I think is even better than the dual coil, at least in my little test I just did today. So if you don't have any of the Protanks, get the Protank 3, try the single coil and the dual coil, find out which one that you like better. If you like it to burn a little hotter, get the dual coil. If you like a little more flavor and vapor, I think the single coil did better. If you already have the Protank 2, move on to something else. That's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel for Tobacco Solutions. I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.